What is up, YouTube? I'm Gaudet74 here, bringing you guys Week 4, Season 4 of the PEBA. This week, we're taking on the Evergrande Eevees, coached by Eevee. We are both going into this game with a 1-2 record. Now to recap what happened last week for you guys, we did lose the Jakal in a game that just wasn't even close, and we're just going to straight up move on from it. I'm really happy we do not have to face Scizor anymore this season, but that does not mean that our schedule gets any easier. Before I get into any more parts of this video, I want to let you guys know that I recently made a Discord that is in the description below. I'm not going to be doing too much in it yet, but it is frequently new, and once the PEBA end or the APM end, I do have some exciting things going on afterwards. But until then, it's just kind of there. If you want to join, I'll be pretty happy. If not, so be it. We're going to move on to the actual matchup I want to talk about today. We are currently 2-1 against Eevee, so we are positive against my opponent. However, we are not positive in the league, as we are currently 1-2, and we need to win this game again if we want to reach up to 500 in the season, because again, 1-2 is not that great for us. Eevee has a team, he got the first pick, and he has a pretty good team overall. I don't have much else to say about it, and we're just going to jump right into it. So like I said, Eevee did have the first pick in the entire draft, and we're going to look at his team because of it. His team consists of Megalodios, Corviknight, Infernape, Amoonguss, Vaporeon, Ribombee, Gligar, Diancie, Sneasel, Raichu, Tangela, and Gumshoes that can Dynamax. Now I expect my opponent to bring is actually just the top 6, Megalodios, Corviknight, Infernape, Amoonguss, Vaporeon, and Ribombee. The only other mons I could see potentially coming are Gligar and Raichu. I only say that because they're both electric immunities, and I am, spoilers, bringing Heliolisk this time for the first time ever this season, and if he wants an immunity and stopping me from Volt Switching repeatedly, he's kind of going to have to bring one of these two mons. But otherwise, the top 6 are what I'm expecting. The biggest threat to my team is definitely Megalodios. If I don't have Mega Aggron around, I kind of just have to deal with it head on, and if I don't, I could just lose the game on the spot. Mega Aggron is a semi-decent way to deal with it, at least for a little bit, but again, if it gets chipped down throughout the battle and Mega Aggron is then gone, it could be a serious problem. Luckily, I did kind of over-prepare for Megalodios, so it's not the biggest threat in the entire world, but it's still worth mentioning. Amoonguss is generally annoying, especially with the Regenerator for my team. It's not going to be like just staying in and walling everything, but it's just going to stick around for a little bit too long to the point where I could see it being really annoying. And then finally, Corviknight plus Vaporeon can actually drag out my way of winning a lot, because I'm going to be bringing a Curse Mega Aggron, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But a Haze Vaporeon and just a bulk up Corviknight can just be so annoying for this set, and I could still beat them. It's just going to take a really long time to do so. But everything else is not really an immediate threat to my team, if at all a threat to my team. It's just stuff I could see coming. And that is just my outlook of my opponent's team this week. As I mentioned, Curse Aggron is going to be my way of winning. And I also have a Specs Heliolisk to help me out a bit there. And a few other mons to support, as I'll talk about in a few seconds. But what I am bringing to this game this week consists of Mega Aggron, Slowking, Mandibuzz, Tapu Bulu, Kyurem, and Heliolisk. So let's talk about this Mega Aggron set I've been hyping up. This set is Curse, Rest, Heavy Slam, T-Punch with a decent amount of Esdeath and attack, and I actually do have some speed. You're probably wondering why in the world I have speed on this set. Well, if I get a Curse up, I actually still outspeed a no-speed Amoonguss. So that's why I have speed there. If I get up to +1, I can click Heavy Slam, and if it's the Esdeath Amoonguss, it's going to do around like 85 to possibly an OHKO. So that's why I decided to run a little bit of speed, just so I could still outspeed it and not have to take like a Spore or something that could be really annoying for my Aggron. And that's why I have the speed there. Otherwise, the rest was in Esdeath, so I can take special hits a little bit better. Heavy Slam T-Punch was the only coverage I needed. T-Punch hits Corviknight and Vaporeon, and Heavy Slam kind of just nukes everything else that exists here. My opponent does not have many special attackers, and if they do, they're completely hardwalled, like the Ribombee can't touch Aggron. Not Sneasel. Diancie cannot touch Aggron, really. Raichu can, so I won't really talk about that. Megalodios needs to have like Thunderbolt or Shadow Ball in order to hit me, or needs to be boosted. So I felt pretty confident being able to run the set this week. No rocks on this kind of sucks, but I don't feel like it's going to be the end of the world. The chipping down at my opponent's team is going to be hard enough because they have recovery on basically every mon. So that's something I have to watch out for. And I really feel like this Aggron is going to put in a lot of work. I just have to be careful like Haze, Vaporeon, and bulk up Corviknight, as I mentioned. But that is going to be Mega Aggron. Next up is Slowking. This is mixed bulk, but more especially defensive with a Rocky Helmet. Moves being Scald, Flamethrower, Toxic Teleport. This is my Infernape switch in, like 100%. That's what this is mainly here for, and probably going to be its only job in the battle. It's a way to kind of check a Corviknight. I can't necessarily beat it, but if I can burn it with Scald or Flamethrower and just kind of teleport around it, I think I'll be okay there. It's also a switch into Diancie and Vaporeon, as I had written down here for Toxic. But otherwise, as I mentioned, it's just here for Infernape. Without Slowking, Infernape was actually a pretty big threat to my team, so I do have to be a little bit careful. I do expect a special one just because of how big of a threat Aggron is here, which Slowking deals with a lot better than physically. But I have the Rocky Helmet just in case that Infernape is physical for physical attacks. But yeah, that's Slowking. Next up is Mana Buzz. Mana Buzz is also mixed bulk but more defensive with the boots. Moves being at Foul Play, Knockoff with Defog and Roost. Defog is 4 webs. I do not have Brave Bird on the set, and it's something I really did want. I did have some serious 4 move slot syndrome this week, but Foul Play was to make sure I can just deal with Latios in a 1v1 scenario, and Knockoff was just generally good utility. And I'm realistically only losing out on Indie, Infernape, and Amoonguss, but knocking off the other items is still very useful. It also sucks I can't run U-turn just to gain momentum, but Slowking for Infernape's fine, and Mega Aggron can basically wall Amoonguss as long as Spore ain't a thing. So I feel like I'm going to be okay with this Mana Buzz set this week. That is Mana Buzz. Fourth up, we have an interesting one. We have Tapu Bulu here with a Life Orb, who's being Swords Dance, Horn Leech, Zen Headbutt, and Superpower. You're looking at me, and my opponent has a Corviknight, an Amoonguss, and an Infernape, a Mega Latios, a whole bunch of Grass Resist. Why the hell am I bringing this thing? Well, the thing is that my opponent's probably going to have Corviknight as my main switch into this, right? And anytime Bulu comes in this game, I'm going to Swords Dance. And it's meant to be my early game breaker because if I set up another Swords Dance, I'll live a non-invested Brave Bird every time, and then Superpower, unless their Corviknight is max Impish, should OHKO the Corviknight. And if I can get rid of the Corviknight, that will be great for me. It's going to be a really ballsy set. I'm not sure if it's even going to work because if my opponent has any attack investment into Corviknight, it could be a lot more riskier than it needs to be. But I would happily trade my Bulu in for the Corviknight. And Bulu still has a decent matchup against my opponent's lower tiers. Granted, I don't think they're really coming, but Bulu really shines against them, as well as the Vaporeon. So yeah, that's Bulu. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but hopefully it puts in work. Fifth up is Kyurem. This is my Scarf Kyurem that has Modest Nature with the moves Ice Beam, Freeze Dry, Earth Power, and Flash Cannon. I have a decent amount of bulk and speed. This is just my late game cleaner. I'm a big fan of Ice type assuming my late game cleaner, as my Vanillix did that in PTL a lot. And now I'm bringing Scarf Kyurem for this job this week. Kyurem has an amazing matchup because my opponent has a lot of Ice Weak Mons, especially if I Freeze Dry, it beats the Vaporeon. And the Corviknight's going to be forced to be Spadef in order to deal with this thing. And if it's Spadef, then Bulu can break through it, and if it's, all that stuff. So my Corviknight can't do everything in this battle. It has to choose one thing to deal with, and hopefully it's more defensive, so Kyurem can actually break through it a little bit easier. And Scarf is there to outspeed everything on my opponent's team, which is really nice. And give me a way to deal with Latios from an offensive standpoint. But that is Kyurem. And then finally we have our Heliolisk making its season debut this season. Max speed, max attack with choice specs. Moves being Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, Hyper Voice, and Surf. Depending on what my opponent brings, depends on what move I want to lock into in this game. If there's no Gligar and Raichu, I'm probably clicking Volt Switch. If they come, then Hyper Voice is probably going to be the play. That's basically all Heliolisk is meant to do, is just have choice specs and click a button. Hyper Voice I think is going to be really nice here, as well as the T-Bolt spam. I have max speed to outspeed Infernape. I know Infernape does get Mach Punch and Vacuum Wave, but if it's going to be a special set, it's probably going to have Vacuum Wave. And Vacuum Wave doesn't do nearly as much as Mach Punch. Mach Punch would probably OHKO me, but Vacuum Wave is never going to OHKO my Heliolisk here, which is pretty nice to know. And just the electric typing is really good to break through my Aggron's checks in the Corviknight and Vaporeon. But that is the Heliolisk set, and that's going to wrap it up for the team builder this week. I'm looking pretty forward to using this team. It's more of a fun team than anything. I really like the Aggron, Bulu, and Heliolisk this week. But we're going to head over to Pokemon Showdown, and we're going to watch the battle. Alright, we are here on Pokemon Showdown. I do apologize, there's a little bit of a freeze here. But my opponent brought a lot of things I was not expecting, including the Diancie. Both Gligar and Raichu came, so I kind of got that right at least. But in regards to lead, Tapu Bulu looks 18 times better because there's no Corviknight, which kind of blew my mind. But I'm going to lead off with it because it looks really good, and Bulu and Heliolisk are meant to break this game. By the way, because of what is brought here, Heliolisk is probably going to be clicking Hyper Voice, especially because you see Diancie's down to 1% in turn 1, as they just throw up rocks, and I am completely okay with this. I have Defog on Mana Buzz for rocks and webs if Rabombi was to come, but it did not. And by turn 2, this Diancie is gone. And this is a phenomenal first 2 turns for me, because Diancie was preventing Heliolisk from really Hyper Voice spamming, but now Hyper Voice is going to chunk almost anything on this team, which is great. Mana Buzz is going to be my switch into Infernape just because I want to defog, as they are going to be a special Infernape like I thought, and I can roost off this damage because it's not choice specs or anything, which is pretty nice. And I'm also going to get a little bit of terrain recovery because I clicked Roost. And now this turn I can click Defog, as they're going to switch out into the Gligar, and I'm fine with that, to be honest. Get rid of the rocks, and now rocks are gone for the rest of the game, and I can actually knock off this thing's Eviolite, which I'm going to do as I trade it for a Toxic on my Mana Buzz, which is fine because Mana Buzz is not doing too much in this game. And this, by turn 6, this is like everything's going really well for me. And Mana Buzz is on Toxic Timer, but Gligar's thing's knocked off, Diance's gone, and now I can get my blue in for free here, and I'm looking pretty good. Gligar's going to use Knockoff, which is something I wasn't expecting, and they knock off my Life Orb, which is a little bit annoying, but it's also not the end of the world. I can just fire off a Horn Leech now, and it's going to chunk Gligar for a decent chunk. I almost clicked Swords Dance, but if they went hard out into Latios, then it wouldn't have been the greatest thing, so I decided just to click Horn Leech. It still works out here. Toxic's not the end of the world. As I go in the Aggron here, which might seem like a weird play, but I do this because I was actually expecting the Lati, and I really don't want my Lati in on Tapu Bulu, just in case it's like a subset. And that's something I don't want, is a Lati behind a sub, so that's why I made that play. And Infernape came in, and it doesn't mind because Slowking can just switch into that anytime. If not, I still have Mana Buzz. I throw off a Toxic expecting the Vaporeon to come in, which I catch it on, which is really nice. And now I can just go right back out on the Bulu, basically insisting that I keep up Grassy Terrain this entire game, as you guys can see, as they just throw up a Wish. And that's fine. I'm going to double out here just because there's no point of attacking if they go out into like Infernape or Lati and just catch that Wish. Mana Buzz can cover both of them as my opponent decides to go out into Infernape, which is fine with me. By the way, guys, I apologize, even though it's not a new thing. I've been talking really fast. I've been also doing it during the team builder, so I do apologize if I'm a little bit fast for you guys. It's just something I naturally am doing, and I always do it through my battles. It's just I'm noticing it more today, so apologies for that. Go down to Slowking. It's always a nice switch into this Infernape here, as they're just going to click Flamethrower, not do too much to me at all. And now I can click a button this turn. I'm going to click Scald. I didn't think they'd go on the Vaporeon, but they did. That's fine because I can just go out into either Bulu or Heliolisk respectively. And this time I'm actually going to teleport out instead of just hard switch just in case, as they actually do have Ice Beam. So if I went on the Bulu, it would not have been a great idea. I'm going to teleport, and now I can get my Heliolisk for free and click Hyper Voice for free. This is great because Diancie is gone, Gligar will be knocked out, and anything else doesn't want to take it, as Raichu comes in, and this is going to hurt, as it does 95% to Raichu. If I was modest, it probably would have killed, but I'm actually timid, so it's not, not the end of the world here. Going to Bulu, I put Bulu on the team just to try and break through early, but also as a potential switch into Raichu. And it's going to prove dividends here, as that is really what it just did there. I can Horn Leech on this Infernape. It's going to do a decent chunk, even without my Life Orb. That's pretty respectable damage. And get Bulu almost back up to full, which is really nice here. Still want to keep this around, so I'm going to go on the Mana Buzz and just go into that. I'm not sure if my opponent has realized that I don't have Brave Bird at this point, but they have stayed in, so maybe they know. They have Grass Knot, that's good to know, good information, so Slowking is going to get hit a little bit harder. I knocked off just to do damage. They revealed Expert Belt earlier, forgot to mention. So I'm glad I knocked that off because Grass Knot will do a lot less to Slowking if they don't have the Expert Belt. As I just sacked the Mana Buzz, I could have went on the Slowking, but Mana Buzz wasn't really doing too much now that the rocks were gone, so it's whatever. I can go into Heliolisk and just click a button anyway, as they're going to be forced to sack something or just take a lot of damage, as Gligar is going to be sacked to the Hyper Voice. So it is 5-4, but things are looking really upwards right now just because of how good Heliolisk's matchup is here. So things are nice. Bulu comes back out, getting the terrain up for the 18th time in this game, as they just Volt Switch out. They do gain some decent momentum here, but luckily for me, they go out into Infernape and not Lati, so that's fine. I do have a Slowking that can just switch into this, which is not really a big deal, which is exactly what I'm going to do here, as they're just going to click the Flamethrower and basically do no damage. By the way, I went out to Heliolisk earlier on Infernape, Vacuum Wave if they even have it, and that won't OHKO my Heliolisk, so I was okay with making that play. I'm going to teleport again, expecting the switch, and now I just get in my Bulu. I could have went on the Heliolisk, but I just went on the Bulu for a certain reason that I don't remember. Oh, it was actually to not risk the freeze, because if I clicked Hyper Voice, which is what I would have clicked, and they stayed in and clicked Ice Beam, and I got frozen, I would have been in a really bad spot. So I went on to Bulu instead, as I can still get a kill as Raichu just drops there, which is really nice. It's 5-3, and now they're going to bring in the big threat Latios. This thing's looking pretty scary. I'm going to switch out into the Aggron, which is at full health, and they're going to Mega Evolve and just click the Ice Beam, which does a decent amount of damage still. 24% is quite a bit. As now I can Mega Evolve this following turn and click a button as Vaporeon comes in, and I didn't click Curse just because Vaporeon and Infernape are still around. I saw no point, so Heavy Slam was always a good play. I always have good switch-ins into this thing, so I'm not too scared of it. I'm going to switch into the Blue just because Blue's not as important now that Raichu's gone. And I can just click Horn Leech the following turn as they just click Scald, which is not really a big deal. Can't get burnt because I'm already poisoned. And I can click Horn Leech. There's no point in really predicting because I don't have a button to click Lottie anyway. Horn Leech is always my greatest play, as Horn Leech still does 44% to Infernape, which is just a lot of damage. At this point I realized Freeze Dry on Kyurem and a button on Heliolisk is enough to kill Vaporeon, so I'm actually going to stay in as they click Grass Knot. And that's perfect because I'm actually going to be able to knock out this Infernape with Horn Leech, and this Infernape is no longer a problem for my team because it could still, Wish Passing is still annoying with Vaporeon, but it's not a big problem anymore. And at this point, I just need to damage this Latios and not play stupid around it. I'm going to go hard out onto Mega Aggron just to prevent anything really like a sub. As they click T-Bolt, predicting, it does a lot of damage, but I will be able to live the next one. As they click it again, and as I live it, and I'm going to click Heavy Slam, and it does a 79% to this thing. I'm pretty sure that's like almost a max roll, so I do apologize for that, but realistically, I'm not sure how much it's going to matter at this point, because they do knock out my Mega Aggron, but Latios has no health, Vaporeon is semi-low, Kyurem is Scarf, and has Freeze Dry. This game is over because I am going to outspeed this thing because it's holding its Mega Stone, of course. This thing is going to drop, and Vaporeon cannot beat my Kyurem. And for whatever reason, if it managed to kind of break through somehow, the Heliolisk and Tapu Bulu are still in the back. So yeah, Ice Beam is going to do nothing. And spoilers, we are going to win this game, and we're going to win 4-0. So pretty decent win for us in here, and we're going to climb back up to 2-2. So GG to my opponent Eevee. Even a few days later now, I'm still thinking about how questionable it was to bring Tapu Bulu to this type of game because Corviknight was sitting right there. But my opponent did not bring many Grass Resist to this game, and it really paid off for me a lot to make that type of risk. And Bulu put in a lot of work this game, definitely the most work of any member on my team in this week. Heliolisk also put in a bunch of work with Hyper Voice being pretty similar, so that was pretty nice to have in the back. And I felt pretty comfortable with how my game plan worked out. Kind of sad Mega Aggron wasn't able to curse up and sweep, but hey, it's whatever. Bulu put in a lot of work. GG again to my opponent Eevee. Thank you for the battle. We are going to move up to 2-2, and I think we're -1 differential. All of our differential has been really high this season, whether we're winning or losing. It hasn't been really close in regards to diff. So that's that. Before I move on to next week's battle, I want to talk about one thing, something pretty important. I made transactions. I did mention that I was going to make them, and I did stick to it. I forgot to do it for this week's battle, which it honestly wasn't that bad for me because I'm going to let you guys know this is Tapu Bulu's farewell because I am dropping Bulu. I dropped Bulu, Seviper, and Armaldo, and I picked up Venusaur, Torkoal, and Farfetch'd. Now the reason I did this was because that I wanted Bulu's matchups for the rest of the season are really not that good. This matchup, it still wasn't that great, but the thing is that Bulu outspeeds the things that resist its attacks, while in the next almost every game for the rest of the season, everything's faster. So for example, I face Elliott soon, he has a Moltres. I know Nico has a Volcarona, stuff like that. I think every opponent has something faster than Bulu, and I felt like it wasn't going to do too much. So Venusaur, Torkoal, Suncore is something that could do a lot more work, especially because the Poison type is a pretty good type offensively, at least I think, and then Venusaur has amazing coverage options as well. I don't have a Fairy because of this, it kind of sucks, but it's not the end of the world here. Farfetch'd as a Dynamaxmon is really threatening just because it can hold Stick, and Flying Stab is much more threatening than Poison on the Dynamaxmon, just because Max Ooze is not the greatest. And while I did want to use Viper a lot, it's not the end of the world. I've been wanting to use Farfetch'd for a bit here. And then finally, I needed something else to drop, and Armaldo wasn't really doing much on this team, so we did that for Torkoal. I don't really like having Torkoal and Entei on the same team, but since it's the Sun team, it's not the end of the world. At least it's a semi-Sun team, and I have Venusaur, Entei, Heliolisk that can take advantage of it, and a few other things. So we're going to make it work out, and hopefully it doesn't become too much of a weakness for me. And yeah, this is the team we're going to be rocking out with for the rest of the season, unless I see some other transactions. But that's going to basically wrap it up for this. Just to let you guys know, that is what our new team is now. Next week we face off against Elliot, who is the A commissioner, B the GOAT, C 4-0 undefeated, which is really annoying, and B a person who owns Mew and Mega Beedrill on their team, which is very scary. That's going to be next week's battle, and he's not a GOAT Crusader, he's just, he's the GOAT. But that's going to be it. Thank you guys for watching so much. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you like Pokemon Draft League content, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm going to head out of here. Have a fantastic day, YouTube.